Good evening and welcome to another edition of Special Assignment. I'm your host, Ashraf Garda. Well, tonight we are proud to announce that Special Assignment cleaned up in the TV category of the Weber Wenzel Legal Journalist of the Year Awards. Producer Adele van Niekerk won the Journalist of the Year Award for two of her stories, Double Standards and Home is Where the Hurt Is, which the judges referred to as outstanding. And producer Hazel Friedman also received a commendation in this category for a two-part series, Dead Cows. And recently, Hazel also won the Vodacom TV Feature Journalist of the Year Award in the Western Cape for her two-part story titled Cape of Wars. Well, tonight we bring you the highlights of these award-winning stories.
This is one of the many overcrowded cells inside Johannesburg Prison's B section. The jail is widely known as Sun City, a swipe at the appalling conditions inside its cells. This is where Tsepo was incarcerated when skin cancer was diagnosed, but by then it had already spread to his lungs. Here, Tsepo found it more and more difficult to take care of the multiplying cancerous growths on his upper leg. It soon turned septic, leaking fluid throughout the day and giving off an unbearable stench. In these letters, he pleads with the prison's management to be moved to the prison's hospital. In a handwritten side note, an official refuses his request, citing his weak immune system as the reason.
As the toilet is leaking, you can see it's all everywhere.
Instead, Tsepo was moved to this single cell. Its toilet leaks sewage onto the floor. He's bound to a wheelchair and it makes it difficult to keep the cell clean. At times, the water in his cell runs dry. And at best, he has this quality of water to keep his cancerous growths clean. Here, Tsepo prepares to clean his septic growths. It's a task he has to repeat throughout the day. These bandages had to be bought by other inmates.
And just imagine, it's all so. What if it's 4 days?
You keep every 4 days on my hands, huh?
4 days? Yeah, I don't imagine. Mama told him into the dress. Yeah, 34 days.
In fact, true to prison culture, Tsepo has to source and buy all his medical supplies from other inmates. But for now, he relies heavily on this barter system for his survival.
Because why was I suggest they saw it being a con is like lightning.
Do you feel anything plenty else? I imagine like you feeling body or rubbing pain.
Yeah, I would feel the pain, but then I have no choice. You feel the pain, many years.
You don't even you have painkillers or something?
No, but painkillers no what told us
How? Kind of better, how about you?
The last time I had to fight leanness for tablets, so I'm a painkiller.
In this confidential policy document, the Department of Correctional Services admits that inconsistencies existed within the medical parole system, and that some inmates may have died because of these oversights. But it wasn't until a public outcry over the medical parole of Shabir Sheikh, former financial advisor of Jacob Zuma, that amendments were made to the Act. Sheikh was sentenced to 15 years imprisonment for fraud. He served only 2 years of that sentence before being released on medical grounds for chronic hypertension. His case drew much criticism and speculation about his true health conditions. Criminal law expert Emmanuel Maravenika says the new law no longer requires a sick inmate to be dying.
Anyone suffering from a terminal illness or anyone who's in a way been physically incapacitated by disease or any such ailment within the prisons and is unable to look after himself, live a daily normal life, they can apply for medical parole.
The most significant change in the new law is the creation of a panel of medical experts who sit on the Medical Parole Advisory Board. This means less power to treating doctors. But for many inmates like Tsepo, the new law has brought little hope. In February this year, we also brought you the story of Bobby Lepeng and showed you the images of his last living hours. He battled the prison authorities for 2 years to get released on medical parole. He had full-blown AIDS and chronic TB. Yet authorities chose to dismiss his application. Instead, Bobby had to resort to appeal his sentence. He succeeded, but it came too late. He died a few days later. Since then, Bobby's sisters have been trying to get justice in their brother's case. They want to hold the Department of Correctional Services accountable for what happened under its old medical parole system.
They must treat everybody equal, not who is who. There he is now, he's gonna die peaceful among his family. He's at his house now, comfortable, whatever. Why they didn't consider Bobby? I mean, Bobby could also survive. If he wasn't a central prisoner, they closed the gates for Bobby. He could really survive, 100%.
We have been saying this since time immemorial. You need to be politically highly connected, so much so that the hills or the mountains, Himalaya mountains, would be a Sunday school picnic. You need to be well known.
Coming up next, another award-winning story about how the state fails to enforce protection orders.
Ina Bonet's case shocked an entire nation. It was one of the most extreme cases of violence against a woman by her intimate partner. Despite having a protection order out against this man, Ina's husband, Johan Kotze, he brutally tortured her, instructed 3 men to rape her before he killed her son. In another recent case, an Alberton father gunned down his 2 daughters and critically wounded his estranged wife a day after she decided to obtain a protection order against him. Although the women in our program escaped with their lives, they have their own horror stories to tell of violence inflicted by loved ones.
About a month after we got married, and we just found out that I was expecting with our son, and it just started off with him being angry one night, and next thing he was arguing with me, and then he smacked me.
Like all the other victims of domestic abuse that we spoke to, this woman, who we'll call Zahira, agreed to tell us her story on condition that we hide her identity.
You believe also maybe once the baby's born, things would change because he'll see his child and he'll just, change his mind.
But things didn't change. In fact, the assaults got more violent.
I was breastfeeding him and then we had to burp him afterwards. I had him on my shoulder trying to burp him. And the next thing, this man just got on the bed and punched me in my face. Where, my son was right next to him, he could have hurt him, he could have punched his head. But he got me in my nose where I started to bleed really badly. And then my son's clothes were full of blood. So he just took my son away, put him on the bed. And then he dragged me to the bathroom and he put my head under cold water, under the cold shower.
Experts say pregnancy seems to trigger more violent behavior.
We know statistically that violence often escalates and becomes more intense at 2 points in a domestic violence context. The one is when the woman becomes pregnant, and the second is when the partner who's been abused seeks external help.
As our son got older, Then when he used to drag me to one corner and want to beat me, I used to cover my face with my hands. And then he's like, are you acting smart with me? So I'm like, no, I'm not doing anything. I just want you to hurt me on my head. And then he would go and take our son and smack our son and said, this would hurt you much more than me hitting you on your head.
I want my food.
After 3 years of isolation, violent assaults and emotional torment, Zahira realized that his son could pay with his life. It gave her the strength to leave. But the extreme trauma and isolation already took its toll. Her son lagged behind in his developmental milestones. He couldn't walk or talk. Since Zahira separated from her husband, the family court only granted her a peace order. Her estranged husband has since harassed and intimidated the entire family and threatened to kidnap their child.
When I go to the police, basically they said we should go back to the court, explain to the court what they did, and then get a warrant of arrest. That's the only time they can arrest him. So, but that's what we did, and then the court says, no, we can't arrest him.
And often there's a real obfuscation of information. The cops will say, go to the hospital first. Or they'll say, no, you have to go to the courts first. Or if you go to the court first, they'll say, no, you have to go to the cops first. So you get these real fundamental and banal, but invidious impediments to the implementation of the Act.
We decide to accompany Zahira and her mother to the family court to get a protection order against her estranged husband. We manage to follow Zahira inside the court. Here we can see the court official who is supposed to process the protection order. He questions whether Zahira is facing any real threat.
What he's doing is literally, the person has not acted, but the person is harboring ambitions to behave in a manner that constitutes unlawfulness or a crime. But he has not done it. He's here. He's saying, I will kill you. I will destroy some of your things. You see, he has not done these things. He's just making statements. You see, when people...
Here the court official can be seen as he continues the discussion in front of a colleague and also another woman who is at court to take out a protection order. Zahira's private details of her husband's violent attacks against her and her son are discussed in front of them. Despite all the information around her estranged husband's violent past, the court official accuses Zahira of keeping her son away from his father.
You can say all these things that you are saying that is disturbing your peace when you have his children inside that yard.
Zahira continues to explain her fears around her estranged husband's violent behaviors and his threats to kidnap their son. She informs the court official of the latest incident a few days ago when he arrived at her parents' house and threatened her family and domestic worker.
But the people that went to confront this man at the gate, to engage him on the matter of the child, was not the man. And if that man was going to stand at the yard requesting the child, tell your daughter to go and engage that man as the mother of that child, who she has conceived with the man who's standing at the gate.
Okay. There is a spectrum of insensitivity that is incredibly damaging to the individual and her or his ability to engage the system. And that spectrum starts exactly from the first point of contact, which is usually the police. It's very much prevalent at the hospitals, and then of course when you get to the courtroom, if you get that far, there's a brick wall in front of you of agents and bureaucrats who believe it is their responsibility first to determine the veracity of what you're saying. That is wrong.
And there's more. After the break, the impact of gang wars on communities and our drug mules victims of human trafficking.
For decades, the dormitory suburbs on the Cape Flats, the products of apartheid engineering, have been plagued by poverty, unemployment, drugs and gangs. But this year, the epicenter of the most violent conflicts has been Lavender Hill, whose brutal reality belies the sweetness of its name. Here, a community lives in constant fear of who will be next. We are at the Mackenzie home, where Police Minister Nathi Mthethwa and Police Commissioner Ria Piyega are offering condolences.
We were so surprised, you see, because wat ons wil 'n bietjie nou beter omdat die minister nou hier gewees het en daar was nou het gevat van die saak. You know, nou voel ons miskien nou ook hulle gaan bereken aan, but daar is no arrest.
This year, 25 people have been killed by gang violence, 7 of them children. There have been calls to deploy the army as a short-term measure to stabilize the situation.
It's not a call from Dan Plato or Helen Zille. It's a call from the people on the ground. That is what the people are asking us. Meeting after meeting, it is their call.
The province's police say they have improved capacity to deal with the gangs. And during his July walkabout, Minister Mthethwa dismissed the army as an option.
This thing of having soldiers to come and shoot, what are you going to shoot here? It's not a playing matter. It's a matter which has to take into cognizance that the police themselves are doing a lot of work.
When we call for the engagement of the army, it is as a last resort, because we feel that the police and other law enforcement agencies just can't seem to get a handle, on the situation.
In fact, the army has been deployed as a short-term measure on several occasions in the past. In 1997 and then in 2002, when the ANC ruled the province at the request of Leonard Ramatlakane, who was then the province's head of community safety, and most recently in December 2011.
And immediately it had a positive impact and effect on the situation. And the police can then make use of the opportunity to do thorough investigations in terms of cases that are pending.
But behind these walls lives a community that no longer trusts the police to protect them, effectively patrol the streets and investigate the criminal economy. And just a few meters from where Mthethwa is conducting his walkabout is a little girl who knows all too well about fear and pain. This is 3-year-old Jesslyn Sentamu. She is paralyzed. Her spine was shattered, and as a result, she has osteoporosis, which means her bones keep breaking. In 2011, she was caught in the crossfire of warring gangs.
I went to buy a bread, and as I told the lady, give me a bread, the gunshots went off. But we didn't realize that she was shot at that time. So when they were finished shooting, her nanny gave her to me. And then when I put the stroller down, I saw her, she fell to the front, then I saw the hole.
Over a year later, there has been no progress in apprehending those responsible. A widely publicized study released in 2006 paints a damning portrait of police members not merely turning a blind eye, but being actively complicit in gang-related crimes.
Go see at police stations how did guns get out of the safes without looking. You will find them, and we just hear recently that at the police station in Ravensmead, 9 guns get lost.
What we're not seeing is effective deployment of crime intelligence to catch the bad guys, to work your way up that food chain, and to start getting to their bosses that drive the violence.
Police has failed our people. As soon as they reckon to us that we are the ears and the eyes in the community, as soon as we give information, within the next 10-20 minutes, the people at the house, are you informer?
The issues of corruption just goes on and on and on, and nobody ever comes to you or comes to a meeting and says, this is what we've done about the issues. Can we really expect the community to come forward if the community doesn't trust the police?
Hermanus in the Southern Cape is home to 28-year-old Megan Warren. She owns a bookstore here. Her mother Liz was regarded as a kind, generous woman and a wonderful chef specializing in African cuisine.
She went on a lot of camp safaris where she'd cook for a whole lot of international clientele. There was a couple there, a German and a Senegalese lady, and they offered for her, they loved her flamboyancy, they loved her cooking. the way she worked, the way she spoke to people, and they apparently were starting a guest house or a hotel up in Senegal, and they said they wanted her on board if she was interested. So they offered for her to travel up for 2 days just to see if she liked it. They'd draw up a contract for her if she did. The flight would be on them. They got off the flight together. They asked her to collect all the bags while they, I don't know, check out, check in. She never saw them again because the police made a beeline for her.
The police found 2.5 kilograms of cocaine in the lining of the luggage. They dismissed her protests of innocence.
There was no one to turn to, obviously. I didn't know who to contact, what to do.
53-year-old Liz spent 3 years awaiting trial in a Dakar prison. In December 2012, she was sentenced to 10 years. She will be 60 when she is released. For now, it's a matter of daily survival.
They sleep on mattresses on the floor, no bedding, no pillows. They share mattresses.
How many women in a cell?
40 women to a cell. There are children in there as well, people's little babies, you know, which, of course, when they get angry, they get violent. And she says at one case, they flung a baby across the room and that just tore her to pieces.
Liz is one of an alarming number of South Africans, mainly women, who have been arrested abroad for drug trafficking. On March the 14th and 21st, respectively, 2 South African women, Nicoline Kruger and Adelina Ononiwu, were sentenced in Thailand, Nicoline to 22 years, Adelina to death, which was then commuted to life because she pled guilty. Special Assignment also exposed a woman who is a sales executive by day and a drug mule recruiter by night.
They've been looking for a white girl tonight because they want somebody to go to the UK.
More than 6 weeks later, the police say they are following up the lead, but the recruiter, 28-year-old Frida Tembo, has yet to be arrested. And there has emerged a horrifying trend in the brutal world of global drug trafficking. Naive or desperate South Africans have been promised jobs by the syndicates. The job never emerges, and they are then forced to become decoys or dead cows. Their sole purpose is to be arrested, while professional mules carrying larger quantities slip past customs undetected. This makes them not guilty of drug trafficking, but victims of human trafficking.
If you look at the recent cases, of which I know that you're also investigating, it became very clear that women are mostly used as drug mules and whilst being trafficked. The problem is, I think, in the investigation and identification of this drug trafficking relating to human trafficking, because sometimes it just looks to the police or the first person to whom it is reported as a normal drug deal.
And as we congratulate ourselves, we also congratulate and thank you, the many viewers, in fact, for your many comments, for your many leads regarding the stories we cover on this show. Well, send us your comments regarding tonight's show via the Special Assignment Twitter platform, our official Special Assignment Facebook page, or you can email us at truth@sabc.co.za. That's it for tonight. Join us again next week when we point out the issues that matter.